Hey guys, tonight we are stepping out of the storm and into the dim, damp shadows of a leaky roof tavern, where your odds of surviving the next few hours are, let us just say, less than ideal. Rain lashes your cloak, thunder rolls like an angry drunk upstairs, and you push open the heavy, half-hinged door with more hope than sense. Inside, it is no sanctuary. The heat is uneven, the stairs are immediate, and that slow drip overhead is a ticking reminder that you probably will not survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I would love to know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. Drop it in the comments. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shoulder your way into the tavern, boots squelching like angry frogs. You expect warmth, maybe even a hearth crackling like a story beginning. But what greets you is closer to a wet sock left on a stone floor. The roof above gives up its defenses without protest. Water drips through rotted timber in lazy patterns, each one splashing into a carefully placed bucket, or worse, a forgotten bowl of what might have been stew. You are not sure. You do not ask. It smells like mold, spilled beer, and something more elusive, maybe disappointment, with a hint of burnt onion. The walls lean in like they are trying to hear your secrets. The room tilts slightly left, or maybe you do. You blink. Nope, definitely the room. Your cloak is soaked through, and you shake off the rain, only to earn a hiss from a corner table where a man who looks like he once lost a knife fight with his own beard glares at you, like you just drowned his cat. There is a creak above your head. You glance up. Wrong move. A fat droplet lands squarely on your brow, sliding past your temple like a slug on a mission. And now you are baptized into the establishment. Historians still argue whether taverns in medieval Europe were actually the rough and tumble death traps we imagine, or if that is just romanticized grit filtered through 19th century literature. What they agree on is that roofs, especially thatched ones, were the first to give up during rainstorms, often leaking so badly that innkeepers would hang fabric over the rafters to redirect the drip. Not to stop it, mind you, just to make it someone else's problem. You shuffle forward. The floor beneath your boots has the texture of bread that has been left out overnight. You suspect at least one part of it is bread that has been left out overnight. The air is humid, as if the storm outside has decided it is not finished with you yet, and is currently moving in, one gust at a time. To your left, a crooked support beam moans, like it is reconsidering its life choices. You are not alone in that. A dog, possibly a dog, sniffs your leg and retreats, seemingly offended by your presence, or your boots, or both. A cheerful barkeep would help, but this tavern was clearly built without that luxury. Instead, there is just a broad-shouldered figure lurking behind the bar, polishing a mug with a cloth that adds grease rather than removing it. He does not speak. He just watches. You feel your soul shift awkwardly in its seat. You try to find a dry spot. There is one. Technically, it is directly beneath a broken taxidermy owl mounted to the ceiling. and every eye in the room could already tell you were heading there. You pause. Maybe not. Leaky roof taverns were once so ubiquitous that Roman travelers often carried personal oilcloths to sit on. You have no such cloth, just a sense of mounting regret and the certainty that something just crawled over your foot. Somewhere behind you, a chair is scraped back. Somewhere else, a coin drops. The tavern seems to breathe in and forget to exhale. You feel like the only person in here who has not rehearsed this moment. A drop of rain lands squarely in the mug you did not order yet. It echoes with such clarity that two people at the next table turn to look. You try a smile. It goes badly. One of them mutters something, and you swear it includes the phrase, storm bait. You want to think this place has charm. Maybe once it did. Maybe 50 years ago, when the roof still held firm, and the ale was not half rainwater, and the dog under the table did not growl when you got too close to the fire. But tonight, it is survival theater, and you are not even in the leading role. You are an understudy who forgot their lines. Your cloak clings to your back like a clingy ghost. The drip over your shoulder now as rhythm, plop, 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 and you swear if it goes on long enough, it is going to spell something in Morse code. Something rude. A man near the fire coughs. Not the polite kind, but the kind that suggests he might owe a debt to tuberculosis and plans to pay in installments. You edge slightly away and into another leak zone. It is impossible to win here. Oh, and just for flavor, in some coastal Norse taverns, people used moss stuffed into the ceiling beams as insulation, which is only great until it rains and the moss starts dripping green juice onto your head. There is a smell coming from above you now. You do not want to guess its color. You think about leaving, but outside is worse, somehow. At least in here, you are surrounded by something that resembles humanity. Damp, slightly mildewed humanity. But still, the door thuds shut behind you. It takes its time doing so, like even the door is reluctant to commit to this place. And so here you are, leaking from above, stewing in below, and with absolutely no guarantee that this night ends with you dry, sober, or unstabbed. Welcome to the tavern. You have survived the first 5 minutes. Statistically, that is longer than most, but we will see how you hold up once the ale arrives and the locals get chatty. You take a cautious step forward, and the floor does not so much welcome you as it accuses you. It squelches, somewhere between wet sponge and old pudding, and the mud that coats your boots decides to stage a small rebellion. Bits slough off and melt into the floorboards, where they join centuries of slop, grime, and poorly aimed soup. You try not to think about what else might be in that mix. The tavern smells like it has not been dry since the last king died. You inch past a table of regulars whose conversation dips into an awkward silence the moment you pass. You catch only fragments. Should have known better. And not another one. One man crunches on something that sounds too loud to be food. They stare into their mugs like the surface of cheap ale contains secrets if you squint hard enough. You press on, instinctively drawn toward the fire, even if it looks more like a moody suggestion of heat than an actual flame. A few logs glow orange, and occasionally spit like they disapprove of your haircut. The stone hearth is cracked blackened by decades of smoke, and beside it someone has tried and failed to dry a pair of socks by pinning them to a nail. They droop there like sad flags of surrender. There is no warmth, not really, but you plant yourself anyway, trying to pretend it helps. Behind you, someone clears their throat in a way that says, "You're standing where I usually grumble." You do not turn around. The thing about muddy floors in taverns is, they were not always accidents. In 15th century Bohemia, some taverns were designed with slightly sunken earthen floors that intentionally collected runoff from boots, barrels, and, allegedly, the occasional poorly aimed bar fight victim. Easier to shovel out once a week than mop every day. One innkeeper is said to have explained, "Charming, no?" You glance at your feet again. The muck has risen, slightly. You hope that is imagination. Then again, the tavern's version of drainage seems to involve just letting everything soak downward and hoping for the best. A rat scurries across the far beam. It has the energy of someone late to a meeting and the tail length of something that should pay taxes. You flinch. No one else does. That says more than words ever could. And speaking of words, they swirl around you, low and heavy. Most of the tavern's patrons speak in the kind of hushed tones reserved for curses, secrets, and deeply regrettable bets. You catch phrases like, "still upstream," "even with the rain," and "she never came back, just her boots." Delightful stuff. You try to focus on anything comforting. There is a wooden sign above the bar, once brightly painted, now just a smear of color and cracked letters. It probably once had a name like the Sloshed Boar or Ye Drunken Cabbage. Now it just reads the SLO, which feels about right. Everything here moves slowly. Your pulse, your comfort, the progression toward whatever doom is waiting. You brush a droplet off your shoulder. It has stained your cloak with something oily. You hope it is just bad insulation. You do not smell toast, so probably not a fire yet. Someone bumps into you, accidentally or not. Hard to say. A slosh of liquid lands on your hand. It sizzles a little, not in the chemical sense, just emotionally. The man, really, grins with too many teeth and says, "Watch where you're standing, stranger." You mutter something vaguely apologetic. He nods like that means you now owe him. You try not to look surprised when he leaves without further menace. It probably means he will be back later, dramatically. Historians still argue whether tavern brawls were as frequent as legends suggest. Some say they were wildly exaggerated by writers looking for action, while others point to court records filled with tavern-related injuries, mostly head wounds and stabby bits. What is clear? The tension you feel now, that is the part that is real. The waiting. The simmering mood where everyone is just one drop tankard away from reenacting a Viking feud. You make your way toward a stool, one near a sagging window, where the glass shivers every time the thunder groans. The stool has 3 legs, possibly 4. One may be wishful thinking. You sit anyway. There is a puddle under your seat. It seeps up. You now have a choice to make. Shift and draw attention to your discomfort, or remain perfectly still and let your undergarments absorb history. You remain perfectly still. The man across from you raises his mug in mock salute. He is wrapped in layers of wool, all the color of things that used to be green. His nose could lead ships in fog. He says nothing, just stares. Then, slowly, returns to his drink. You feel seen, not in a good way. Your cloak drips again, this time with added flair. It lands with a smack on the table beside you, where a woman glares at the intrusion. She moves her bread slightly away from the wet edge. You apologize with your eyes. She replies with hers. You are already in too deep. You decide not to order anything just yet. The barkeep still has not moved. He might be part of the building. He might charge for water damage. Did you know? Some medieval taverns would mix sawdust into spilled ale to sweep it up more easily. Occasionally, the sawdust was reused in the next batch of beer. Just sit with that for a second. That tang in the back of your throat? Probably psychological. Probably. A cheer goes up from the far end of the room. You flinch again, only to realize it's not a fight. It is a dice game, possibly involving bones. Real ones. You wonder if your luck is that bad. You wonder if theirs is worse. The rain intensifies outside. It sounds like 1,000 nails being dropped onto 1,000 tin roofs. But in here, the noise somehow recedes. Everything folds inward. The tavern, for all its grime and gloom, has swallowed you now, and it is not planning to spit you out. Somewhere behind the bar, something shifts in the shadows. You do not want to look. You do not want to know. The drip above you finally stops. A mercy? No, you hear a slow, creeping crack. The roof is adjusting, and you start to wonder if the only reason anyone survives here is because they know exactly when not to move. A crack above your head lingers, stretching across the timber like a lazy serpent. It does not break, not yet. Just enough to remind you it could. The ceiling droops in places where it should not, like dough left too long to rise, and one nail wiggles in slow, rusted protest. You shift in your seat with the grace of someone trying not to be noticed by a collapsing house. The stool under you creaks, a sharp warning note, and you freeze. Someone laughs behind you, not at you. Probably. It is the dry, wheezing cackle of someone whose humor has been fermented in ale and damp misery. You try to play it cool. Spoiler, you do not succeed. A draft seeps through the gap beneath the window. It carries the smell of wet hay, extinguished torches, and that special kind of mud only old towns seem to grow. It slides up your spine like a finger dipped in malice. You begin to understand something. This tavern is not just inconvenient. It is a test of patience, of instinct, of bladder control. Frankly, every creak, every drip, every sidelong glance is part of a quiet gauntlet, designed not to break you outright, but to chip away one damp, shivering sliver at a time. Historically, leaky tavern roofs were not just annoyances. In places like Tudor-era London, inns doubled as boarding houses and social clubs. Leaks were simply part of the charm. Guests were sometimes advised to bring their own cloth for bedding and for shelter. It was not uncommon for regulars to develop favored corners based on how dry or how well the dripping landed into their tankards. And yet, Here you are, empty-handed, soaking slowly into a splintered stool, while the rain thunders overhead like a jealous god with rhythm. Your gaze drifts to the bar. The barkeep finally moves. Not much, just a lean forward and a sharp click of his tongue. The room responds instantly. A hush, a shuffle of mugs. Even the dice players go quiet for a beat. Then it all resumes like nothing happened. But you noticed it. You felt it. The tavern has rules. You just do not know them yet. A man slides onto the bench beside you without asking. He smells like sour bread and salt. His eyes are small, set back like he has been peering into a storm his whole life. He does not speak. He just opens a small cloth pouch and produces walnuts. He cracks one open with his teeth, drops the shell at your feet, and chews slowly, loudly. Then he slides a walnut toward you. This is a test. You take it. You do not eat it, but you accept the gift. He nods. And then he leaves, just like that. No explanation. No follow-up. What did that mean? You may never know, but you pass something. Over at the hearth, the sock is steaming now. It gives the room a vague scent of boiled wool and foot regret. Outside, the storm shows no sign of ending. Rain hammers the roof with renewed fury, as if it is trying to beat the tavern down into the mud, which, to be fair, might improve the place's structural integrity. And then it happens. The sound. At first, you think it is thunder, but it is too sharp, too sudden. It is a crack, real this time, followed by a high, groaning snap. You look up just as a portion of the ceiling gives way. Not directly above you, thankfully, just across the room, but close enough that you feel the cold splatter of its aftermath. Rainwater, rotten straw, and something that might once have been a bird's nest. The crowd erupts, not in panic. Oh no, that would be too easy. They complain, loudly. One man hurls a boot at the mess. Another shouts, "That is twice this month." And someone near the back just shrugs and says, "Should have sat closer to the chimney." You stare. No one is leaving. No one is even moving fast. The roof just partially caved in, and the tavern treats it like spilled soup. That is the moment you realize they are used to it. In 17th century France, taverns like this often operated year-round in rural towns, even during brutal winters and heavy floods. Locals treated collapsed rafters as minor events, mopping up with hay, pushing tables aside, drinking through it. There are even surviving reports of roof repairs happening while guests were still seated, mid-meal, holding up tarps to block the sawdust. And this place feels like a direct descendant of that mindset. The barkeep finally speaks. A single word. Mop. From the back room, a boy appears, no older than 12, holding a bucket and something that might be a mop or just a long, damp stick. He trudges toward the mess and starts cleaning it up with the enthusiasm of a ghost doing community service. Someone near you mutters, "That used to be stew night." Another sighs, "Well, better than blood." You are not sure if that was meant to comfort you. Rainwater continues to plink into newly formed puddles. The candles on the tables sputter as the air thickens with damp. Your cloak, despite being slightly drier now, still sticks to your neck like a judgmental eel. You take stock of the other patrons, the ones who have not left, who are just waiting out the storm like it is nothing. A group of old women knit by the fire, their hands moving in sync like spiders weaving wool curses. A man in armor too dented to be ceremonial plays a quiet tune on a mouth harp. His expression says, this is not even in his top 5 worst nights. And there you sit, the outsider, the amateur, thinking about your options. The roof will not hold forever. The air is only getting colder. And your left boot just gave a suspicious squish that was not there before. You could leave, brave the storm, but outside is ankle deep in mud and mystery. And at least here, you are surrounded by people who might let you borrow a dry rag before they rob you. Or you stay, wait it out, learn the rules, find a drier seat, hope the owl over the bar does not fall. You choose to stay. For now, the barkeep's eyes flick to you, then to the fresh hole in the ceiling, then back to polishing his mug with the same rag that has likely survived 2 plagues and a minor uprising. You could swear he smirks, just barely, and somewhere in your brain, the part still dry and defiant. You think, okay, fine. Let's see who breaks first, me or this roof. The roof holds, for now, but it is like watching a rope slowly fray. Every droplet that lands with a bloop on the floor is a quiet vote of no confidence. You glance at the sagging timbers. The splintered planks stained a mosaic of ancient leaks. They tell stories. Too many of them. Some of the stains resemble faces, if you squint. Others look like maps to places you hope do not exist. You shift your weight again, and the stool protests with a long, tired groan. It is the sound of furniture with regrets. Someone coughs nearby, the phlegmy bark of a man who has spent 20 winters smoking and 1 too many nights sleeping too close to drafty corners. No one offers a remedy. No one even looks up. Your eyes drift toward the door, still ajar just a finger's width. The wind outside whistles through that crack, whimpering like it is too cold to keep going, but too proud to admit it. And still, nobody gets up to shut it. This tavern is not built for comfort. It is built for enduring. You feel that truth in your damp bones, your sagging socks, your slowly wrinkling fingertips. You rise tentatively and decide to test your luck elsewhere in the room. Perhaps there's a seat that is less spongy. You wander past a group of men arguing about something in a dialect that bends vowels like hot wax. One slams his fist on the table and says, "It was a goat, not a ghost," which raises far more questions than it answers. There is an empty bench by the far wall, near a stack of broken barrels that appear to be retired from service. You test the bench with your hand. It is cold, but dryish. Good enough. You sit. From here, you can see the ceiling's worst leak, dripping into a wooden bucket with impeccable rhythm. The sound is hypnotic. Plink, 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 like a passive-aggressive metronome. Taverns like this were not uncommon in the wetter parts of Europe. In parts of Wales, roofs were patched with turf, bark, even animal hides. Some landlord swore that old thatch was better left untouched, because disturbing it made the spirits restless. And that is how you got an alehouse that leaks like a sieve, but nobody dares fix it. Makes you appreciate modern roofing, or at least umbrellas. A tiny owl distracts you. At your feet, a one-eyed cat stares up at you. Its fur is matted, its tail bent like a question mark, and it clearly owns this place in a way no human ever could. You freeze. The cat blinks slowly. Then, with zero invitation, it hops onto the bench and curls against your leg. You are chosen. Around you, a few heads turn to glance at the cat. One man raises an eyebrow. The woman knitting by the fire nods once. Just a twitch of the head, as if acknowledging that something has shifted. You are not sure whether that is good or very, very bad. Did you know that many medieval taverns kept cats for practical reasons? Rats, mice, occasional bat infestations. Cats were pest control. But in superstitious towns, they also became omens. A cat sleeping beside you might be good luck, or it might mean someone nearby will not make it to morning. No pressure. The cat begins to purr. Loudly, it vibrates through the wood. A man across the room starts to sing. Low, slurred, half-forgotten lyrics. The song bleeds into the room, catching on the wood, tangling with the candle smoke. Others join in, off-key, out of sync, but with heart. You catch a phrase. The road was cold. The moon was mean. I traded coin for something green. You do not know the tune, but the rhythm is as old as the floor. Historians still argue whether medieval tavern songs were original compositions or bastardized versions of church hymns turned into drinking anthems. Either way, they were communal memory, stories passed from mouth to mug to memory. Songs like these did not need to make sense. They just needed to keep you warm for one more night. The cat shifts in its sleep. You try not to wake it. Somehow, that feels like a dangerous move. The barkeep rings a bell. A soft ding, more suggestion than sound. Instantly, a figure emerges from a side door. She carries a tray of mugs, steaming slightly. You watch as she delivers one to each occupied table, nodding once at each patron. No one says thank you. She does not expect it. When she reaches you, she hesitates, looks at the cat, looks at you. Then she places a mug in front of you and walks away. The mug is warm, fragrant, some kind of spiced cider, maybe, or the liquid remnants of a good idea. You sip. It is slightly sour, but not unpleasant. It tastes like wood smoke, cloves, and something herbal you cannot place. It tastes like not dying just yet. Your fingers warm against the ceramic. For a moment, you are not miserable. Then something splashes onto your boot. Again, you look up. Another leak has opened above you. The cat flicks its tail, offended. You sigh. Still, you do not move. You are starting to understand. The key to survival here is not avoiding the discomfort. It is accepting it, wearing it like an extra layer. The more you flinch, the more you suffer. But if you sit still, sip your strange drink, and let the cat purr against your thigh, maybe the roof will not fall on you tonight. You watch as someone near the bar begins carving something into the wood. A name? A date? A warning? You cannot see. You do not ask. Some things here are none of your business. That might be the most important rule of all. The song fades into murmurs again. Someone snores. The fire sighs. And just as your eyes start to close, the floor beneath the hearth gives a sudden pop. A trapdoor. You sit up straighter. No one else reacts. A pale hand emerges. Dirty. Calloused. It grips the edge. Then disappears again. Replaced by a boot. Someone climbs out. Slowly. Casually. Like they just popped down to borrow salt from the crypt. The newcomer adjusts their coat, dripping wet. They nod once to the barkeep. The barkeep nods back. No one explains anything. The cat yawns. You take another sip. Because really, what else can you do? You stare at the trapdoor. Just a wooden square in the floor, like any other. Except it clearly is not. You blink, waiting for someone to acknowledge the situation, to call out, "Hey, did that man just climb up from under the tavern?" But no one even glances that way. The man who emerged is already seated at the bar, shrugging off a drenched coat that smells faintly of river water and regret. The barkeep slides him a mug like this is just his regular Tuesday entrance. You resist the urge to investigate. That would be a rookie mistake. So you stay where you are, sipping your lukewarm potion, and pretending your boot is not slowly soaking through. The cat seems content. It's purring now, a rhythmic engine that almost masks the sound of dripping from above. You have officially entered a realm where things happen, and nobody reacts unless blood is involved. And even then, probably not unless it is a lot of blood. Welcome to the tavern's operating mode. Selective apathy. It is both a defense mechanism and a rite of passage. A clatter of dice breaks the silence. The players in the corner are deep into some chaotic game that involves shouting numbers, arguing about goats again, and occasionally throwing a spoon into the mix. You cannot follow the rules. You suspect there are none, but somehow money keeps changing hands. You think back, was that table already there when you walked in? You are not sure. The candlelight plays tricks. The walls shift subtly, like old ships groaning in stormy waters. You could swear the table used to be round. Now it is not. You chalk it up to exhaustion and cider. The floorboards near the hearth are warped now. You notice how they bulge slightly with each step someone takes nearby, like the floor is breathing. No one seems concerned. The man who climbed from beneath it is now lighting a pipe and humming a tune you recognize, something old, something from a dusty documentary narrated by a British historian with a beard. The song is called The Maid of Wind and Rain, a 16th century ballad often linked to English border taverns. Historians still argue whether it was based on a real woman or an allegory for bad weather. Either way, it is the kind of song you do not hum unless you want the wind to answer back. You glance toward the bar again. The barkeep is watching you, not in a threatening way, just assessing. Like a teacher watching the new student realize there is a pop quiz on week 1. You raise your mug in a half-toast. He nods, almost smiles. You have earned another sliver of invisible, non-verbal social credit. Another customer arrives. This one through the actual door, which feels like a novelty now. He is cloaked, muddy, and limping. He says nothing as he enters. The door slams behind him and stays shut this time, as if finally tired of being indecisive. He takes a seat near the fireplace. That fire is weaker now, dwindling as the rain seeps in around the stones. A log shifts with a wet sigh, and a puff of smoke curls into the room, blending with the candle wax and pipe haze. And that, of course, is when the floor starts to hum. Not loudly, you would miss it, if not for the mug trembling in your hands like a skittish animal. The cat lifts its head, ears twitching. The hum is low, resonant, a bass note with no source. You glance around. No reaction from the others. Or maybe they are just ignoring it on purpose. Taverns in the 14th century were often built on top of older structures, burial grounds, Roman ruins, long forgotten foundations of towns that blinked out of existence before maps became reliable. Sometimes the ground remembered strange noises, cold spots, odd smells. Locals rarely questioned them. They just added more straw, poured another drink, and carried on. The hum fades. For now, you become aware of something else. An odd clinking sound, metal on metal. You follow the noise to the man at the far table. He is polishing a small, curved blade with meticulous care. Not a sword, not a dagger. Something in between. A fisherman's knife? A medical tool? Something not meant for casual display. He meets your eyes. You look away. The cat hisses once, then relaxes again. You stroke its head like a distraction. The room is full now. When did that happen? More people have entered, filling benches and shadows. You would swear some of them were not there a moment ago. One woman wears a veil of feathers. Another holds a candle in her palm, its flame unmoving despite the draft. Nobody speaks louder than necessary. Nobody shouts orders or complains about the wet floor. It is a room running on instinct and hierarchy you do not understand. But you are learning. You are quiet now, still, watching, listening, nodding when someone nods at you. That is how you survive the Leaky Tavern during a storm. You do not try to fix anything. You just belong, or at least fake it, until the roof gives way. The ceiling groans again. Not the usual creak. This is different. It is the sound of surrender. A long, drawn-out moan, like an old tree bending toward inevitability. Several patrons glance upward, then carry on. No one moves. You do? Just a foot to the left. You shift subtly, like stretching a cramp, like you have no idea that a chunk of plaster is about to crack. The panel gives out, crashing onto the spot where you were just sitting. Rain splashes in, along with a flood of cold air and bits of bird feather and twigs. You leap up, nearly spill your mug, and somehow manage to avoid kicking the cat. Everyone watches for half a breath. Then they go back to their drinks. A man near you says, "Lucky." You mutter something about great instincts. He smirks and toasts your near miss with a chipped mug. The barkeep replaces your fallen drink with another, without a word. You find a new seat. Not quite dry, not quite safe, but less cursed. And through it all, The storm rages on, the wind howling like a wounded god, and the roof, oh, that treacherous roof, holds together with spit, stubbornness, and a threadbare sense of irony. Still want to survive a night here? Let us see how long you last when the fire dies. You are seated now beneath an exposed beam, one of the few that looks like it has not lost the will to live. Above you, the fresh hole in the ceiling continues to weep onto the floor, forming a spreading puddle that creeps forward like a shy animal. The fire crackles unevenly, half smothered by the influx of damp air. Everything smells faintly of moss, wet ash, and that one medieval stew ingredient nobody admits they added. The cat, having barely flinched at the roof's collapse, has moved on to the lap of a man with no eyebrows, who seems to be teaching it Latin. You are not certain. You are not asking. Behind you, the bar pulses with life again. Mugs clink. Low laughter circles the room, and someone begins whittling an object that looks vaguely like a chess piece, but probably isn't. You feel oddly accepted now, like an unpaid extra in a dream sequence. The man with the blade, remember him? He is still polishing, still watching, but it is not personal. He watches everything. You suspect that if the ceiling fell entirely, he would nod once, finish his cider, and simply shift chairs. Did you know that in 15th century German taverns, there was often an unofficial enforcer, a man who, without title or uniform, kept the peace through sheer presence, not paid, not thanked, just understood. It was more superstition than security. If he was watching, maybe the bad luck would strike someone else first. The fire flickers again. The cloaked man near it, the one who limped in earlier, speaks for the first time. You know what lives in the chimney? Nobody answers. That is the correct response. He chuckles. Just a puff of sound. Nothing anymore, he says. Cool. Totally normal. You wonder if that bucket by the hearth is full of rainwater or something worse. It looks like it moves when you are not looking directly at it. You stare harder. Still. Then not. Then still again. Someone begins tuning a stringed instrument, crudely made, several strings short of respectable. A lute, possibly, though one that sounds like it has witnessed crimes. The player, a thin woman with elbows like knives and a grin far too wide, launches into a tune with aggressive cheer. It is fast, lively, a jig that demands footwork from shoes not built for dancing. A few patrons slap their tables in time. One person gets up, twirls once, then promptly sits down like that was all the energy they had for the week. The roof shudders again. Another leak appears, this one near the entry. It drips onto a man's hat. He does not move, just lets it drip. It becomes part of his rhythm. Inhale, sip, drip, blink. Your cider has cooled now. The flavor has shifted, slightly more medicinal, less herbal, still oddly comforting. You have started to categorize the tavern sounds: dripping, coughing, wood stretching, fire sighing, dice tumbling, mud kissing wood, whispered curses, and yes, another creak from beneath the floorboards. A trapdoor again. You try not to look, but you do. Of course you do. This time, Only a small burlap sack is passed up by no visible hand. The barkeep grabs it, shakes it once, listens like it is a seashell, then tucks it under the counter. No words exchanged. Your brain demands logic. Your heart, however, politely asks it to shut up and play along. You listen to your heart. It seems better suited for this place. Across the room, a man is reading aloud from a scroll. No one asked him to. The scroll is long, poorly inked, and possibly upside down, but he reads with conviction. Words like blessed marrow, six-legged lamb, and the bishop's sister's goat are thrown around. It's all very captivating and deeply unhelpful. And then the door opens again. Just a crack, just enough. Wind howls through, and you get your first true taste of the storm's breath. Salty, sharp, tinged with ozone and something floral. Lavender? No, something older, earthier. In ancient inns near the Baltic Sea, storms were sometimes believed to carry spirits seeking shelter. If a tavern refused entry, it risked attracting spite, blighted ale, spoiled meat, roofs torn off in one angry gust. So many innkeepers kept the door cracked just enough to let the spirit choose for itself. You begin to suspect this tavern abides by similar policies, and now the smell intensifies. Someone near you stiffens. A few patrons rise and begin clearing a space near the center of the room. Swiftly, silently, the musician stops playing mid-chord. The fire dims, as if holding its breath. Into the gap steps a child. A child, small, cloaked, face mostly hidden. No one speaks. Not a single boot step echoes. The child walks slowly to the bar, places something shiny on the counter. A coin? A tooth? Then turns and walks straight toward the back room. The barkeep does not touch the object for a long time. You turn to the person nearest you, a woman with half-moon tattoos on her fingers. Did you see that? You ask, voice barely above a whisper. She nods once. He's early this year. You think about asking more, but the look in her eyes suggests you do not want the answer. Instead, you glance upward. The roof is holding, for now, but something is moving along the rafters, soft scratches, like claws or boots, or both. And still, no one runs. No one panics. This is just rain day protocol. You decide to stay seated. Because honestly, what are your options? Go outside? Into that? You can hear it now. The sound of wind snatching trees by the root. Rain that flattens the grass in horizontal sheets. Somewhere distant, something groans like a ship cracking in two. A man near the door is mumbling over his mug. You lean slightly, trying to catch the words. Storm like this always brings him up. From the mines, from the wells, from under. You do not ask who them is. A bolt of lightning lights the room for 1/2 second. In that instant, you are sure you see a figure in every reflective surface. The ale, the mugs, the puddles, faces, watching back. The thunder takes a full 10 seconds to arrive. A low, rolling bellow that rattles your teeth. The barkeep finally picks up the object left by the child. He turns it once in his hand, mutters something to himself, then tosses it into the fire. It does not burn. It hisses. The flame flares blue. The room exhales. A few people resume their conversations. The music resumes, slower this time, gentler, almost sad. You are still here, and the roof is leaking harder than ever. Your boots are soaked now. The puddle beneath your new seat is expanding like an ink blot, and you are pretty sure something cold just brushed against your ankle. You do not react. That is the unspoken rule here. Reacting means acknowledging, and acknowledging means participating, which, in this place, is a commitment you may not be ready for. A barmaid with one eye and 12 bracelets slides by, humming a lullaby you vaguely recognize from a documentary about Viking funerals. She stops at your table, places a piece of bread beside your mug, and vanishes before you can say thank you. The bread is warm, slightly too warm. It pulses, just once, like it has a heartbeat. You eat it anyway. Above you, the rafters groan again. The patter of rain has changed tempo. It is no longer random. It is rhythmic. You strain to listen. 5 slow drops. Pause. Then 3 quick taps. Repeat. It is almost communicative. Morse code with mildew. You catch the barkeep watching you again. He is leaning on the bar now, arms crossed. The faintest smirk beneath that river-washed beard. You raise your eyebrows in a silent question. He shrugs. Translation. Welcome to your first rainy day. Historians still argue whether taverns in medieval port towns acted as impromptu storm shelters or unofficial spiritual way stations. The evidence is murky, mostly anecdotal, and deeply unnerving, but some agree when a sea storm rolled in hard and fast, locals gathered not just for warmth and drink, but because the buildings had been built to protect them from something that came with the wind. A loud pop from the hearth jolts you, just the fire adjusting, but enough to make 3 people near the center table flinch. The man with the blade stops polishing. The scroll reader drops silent. Even the cat pauses its impromptu grooming ritual. You hear it again. Drip. Tap, 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 drip. Someone is answering. Your gaze wanders toward the back wall now, the one with the damp stains that seem to move when no one's looking. The flickering canlight turns every blotch into a vaguely humanoid outline. One in particular resembles a knight mid-lunge. Another looks like a woman screaming underwater. You blink. The stains rearrange themselves. You are now beginning to suspect that you were not invited to this tavern. You were summoned. A man at the next table leans over without turning his head. If the puddles start to ripple, do not breathe too loud. You laugh nervously. He does not. You sip your drink. It tastes like cloves now. You have lost track of time entirely. The concept of minutes or hours feels inappropriate, as if trying to impose structure on a dream. You glance toward the door. It is still closed, though a new puddle has formed in front of it, shaped like a long finger pointing inward. Your shoulders are tense. The room is heavy. You try to focus on small details, the wood grain in the table, the way the window panes shudder slightly with each gust. But the weight of eyes presses on you again. Not just the patrons. The room itself feels aware. The veiled woman in the corner, yes, the one from earlier, starts humming. Her voice is low, raspy, beautiful in a cracked shell sort of way. The melody sounds old, ancient, like it belongs to a century that was not archived properly. Quirky side note. In 12th century Hungarian folklore, certain taverns were rumored to have guardian echoes. These were disembodied voices that mimicked a regular patron's tone to warn others of danger. Historians still argue whether these were the result of natural acoustics or exaggerated storytelling. Either way, you would not be surprised if the tavern you're in had at least 3. The humming shifts into words now, but in a language you do not speak. You do not need to. The meaning seeps into your skin. Longing, loss, arrival, preparation. The entire room grows still. Even the fire listens. And then, without warning, the music outside stops. Not the wind, not the rain, but the underlying hum. That subtle storm throat drone that had pulsed through the walls since you arrived. It is gone. In its absence, the silence becomes deafening. Someone knocks at the door. No one moves. The knock comes again. Louder, slower. 3 deliberate raps, like a bureaucrat with too much time, and a clipboard made of bone. You count the patrons. More than before. Some you swear are new. One has moths fluttering in his beard. Another's boots leave no footprints on the wet floor. A child, not the one from earlier, whispers near the fireplace. That is not for us. You feel the barkeep's gaze settle like a cloak over your shoulders. You turn. He gives the slightest shake of his head. Do not. So you do not. The door remains closed. The knocking stops. Outside, the storm shifts again. The rain becomes gentler. Not softer, just more intentional, like someone switched from chaos to choreography. You hear thunder roll across the sky like bowling pins in the clouds. And somehow, it sounds like laughter. From beneath the bar, the barkeep produces a narrow bottle with no label. The liquid inside is thick, golden, and faintly glowing. He pours a shot and slides it to you. No charge. Why? You ask. He shrugs. You lasted longer than most. You blink. And most what? But he has turned away. The glowing drink smells of burnt honey and pine needles. You sip. It burns, but kindly, like a bonfire hug. You taste a memory you have never had. A meadow under starlight. Laughter echoing in the dark. The weight of a blade in your hand. The storm outside laughs again. You realize maybe the tavern was never meant to keep the storm out. Maybe it was meant to invite it in. A few patrons rise. Some head toward the back, others toward the fireplace. The man with the blade finally tucks it into a boot and follows. The scroll reader kisses his parchment goodbye and vanishes into the back room. The veiled woman hums again. Now a lullaby. One by one, the candles blow out on their own. You are alone at your table. Still here. And the roof, it is no longer leaking. It is breathing. The breath is subtle at first. Just a swell and fall, like a slumbering animal dreaming somewhere overhead. The wooden beams creak in time with it. The puddles on the floor ripple, ever so slightly. You freeze, not out of fear exactly, but because there is a new unspoken rule in the air. If you acknowledge it, it will acknowledge you back. You hold your breath and listen harder. Up and down. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. The tavern roof, warped and patched and older than any building has a right to be, is behaving like a living thing. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally, and nobody seems surprised. The barkeep is wiping down a mug that may or may not be cleanable. The veiled woman has begun braiding something invisible into the air. The one-eyed barmaid is now stacking coasters into a tower as high as her shoulder, each disc humming softly as it's placed. Your instincts, bless them, scream for you to leave, to run out into the storm and accept the consequences. But then you remember that door, the one someone knocked on, the one no one answered, the one you are now very certain opens both ways. A historian once wrote that in some inland towns, inns were less buildings and more thresholds, hinges between realms, built where no one else dared build. He was mocked, of course, lost tenure, moved into a lighthouse, but scholars still debate whether his notes were fiction, madness, or a rare window into an old truth the rest of us chose to forget. You shift in your seat and look up at the ceiling. The breathing continues. It is slower now, calmer, almost as if it has sensed your acceptance. And that is when it happens. From the corner of your eye, a crack appears in the ceiling's darkest corner. Not a leak, a fissure. No water drips out. Instead, something dry falls. Dust, maybe. Ash? No, not ash. Feathers. Just two. Black. Fine as soot. They drift lazily downward and land in your mug. You blink. When you look again, they are gone. You scan the room. Still mostly full. No one seems to have noticed, or if they have, they are pretending they have not. There is a kind of etiquette to this tavern, a rhythm you are still learning, but you are definitely part of now. Across from you, a man with silver rings on every finger lights a small clay lamp with a flame that burns green. The light it casts makes the shadows on the walls appear to move independently. One shadow crouches. Another extends its arms toward the fireplace. They look like guests at a masquerade no one admits is happening. He meets your eyes and smiles. Like this is the part most people enjoy. The barmaid brings you a plate of food. You did not order it. You are not sure it is food. It looks like a pie. It smells like cedar, lemons, and meat. It is steaming gently, but the steam travels downward instead of up. You glance at the barmaid. Eat, she says. It keeps the roof calm. That seems like a strange sentence, even here. But again, you obey. The crust is thick and strangely soft. Inside is not unpleasant, something gamey. Maybe mushroom, maybe. Whatever made those feathers. It fills you with warmth, but your left eye twitches for a full 30 seconds afterward. A man by the door laughs too loudly. The barkeep throws him a look. He stops. Outside, the rain surges again, but this time, it does not fall on the roof. You can hear it hammering down on everything except the tavern. like the building is shielded by something unseen, or is choosing to be ignored. A pair of women near the fire begin playing cards. The deck has no numbers, just symbols, a spiral, a mouth, a tree, a broken bell, and one that looks suspiciously like your own face. You turn away before they flip that one over, and then, behind you, a voice speaks. You made it to the breathing. You turn. It is the blade polishing man. He has not spoken until now. He sits across from you uninvited, but you are not going to challenge that. Most leave before it breathes, before the roof notices them, but not you. You try to speak, but your voice cracks. You clear your throat and try again. Is that good? He laughs once. Short, dry, like someone tearing a page from a book they hate. Depends. It means the tavern thinks you're useful or entertaining. He sets a small pouch on the table. It jingles. Or edible, he adds with a wink. You do not ask what is in the pouch. Instead, you look at his hands, scarred, burned, and covered in ink. Old symbols. One on his knuckle pulses softly. You are almost sure it is in time with the ceiling's breath. Storm's changing, he says. Feels like one of the curved ones. You blink. Curved? He nods. Not all storms move in lines. Some bend, circle, return, and some get in. He taps the table once. The candle flickers. A puddle on the floor jumps slightly. Another historian once noted that certain European inns had ceilings designed with complex internal lattices. Ostensibly, they were to direct smoke or allow drying herbs to hang. But architectural analysis shows something else. Channels that do not make practical sense. Paths that seem to guide rather than support. Theorists suggest they were meant for things that moved above us. Quietly, silently, watching from just beneath the shingles. The man rises again. You'll know soon. If it opens, you'll smell cinnamon, then copper, then he trails off. Then what? You ask. He smiles. Then nothing. He walks away. You sit there, your plate half eaten, your drink mysteriously refilled. The roof breathes again, and the tavern hums along. There's a rhythm now, a pulse to everything. Your heartbeat has begun syncing with the breath of the roof, and that fact should bother you more than it does. You feel yourself settling into it, the way one might unconsciously walk and step with a stranger on a long path. And maybe that is exactly what this is, a long path disguised as a tavern. The table in front of you hums softly. You do not remember it doing that before. The candle flickers again, but now it casts a second flame alongside the first. Perfectly symmetrical, perfectly wrong. You reach to touch it, but it blinks away as if it was never there. A gust of wind presses against the walls. Not hard, more like a giant sigh, the kind you make when looking down on something small, but oddly complicated. You are not sure if the sigh is from outside or above. The barkeep begins winding a copper key into the floor behind the bar. It disappears into a slot you did not know was there. Every click sounds like an old lock turning in a room you have never entered but often dreamed about. He meets your gaze once, offers a dry smile, and says, "If it starts to whistle, take off your boots." You nod. You do not ask why. That ship sailed 3 drinks ago. The man with the silver rings is back. He stands beside the fireplace, holding a wooden bowl filled with what looks like seeds or teeth, or, honestly, let us go with seeds. He tosses a handful into the flames, and they erupt in a plume of deep violet smoke. The smoke hangs there, reluctant to rise, and slowly forms the outline of a staircase spiraling up into nothing. The veiled woman stops humming. A small child, where did she come from, walks up to the image and whispers, "Not this time," before blowing gently at the staircase. It dissolves like sugar in tea. You catch a whiff of cinnamon, just faint, just enough to make you nervous. Now it is raining harder outside. You can hear the gutters outside protesting, but no water falls inside. The roof, it protects, it shelters, it chooses. Quirky side note. In a dusty journal from 1792, a natural philosopher named Peter Groenewold swore that certain buildings could learn. He wrote about structures that adapted over time, not through renovation, but as if they made internal decisions. One was a public house near Delft that, during a thunderstorm, allegedly sealed itself shut from the inside. When the patrons were finally found days later, none of them remembered the missing time, only that the ale had never tasted better. You feel the same way now. Your mug is always full, your plate never quite empty, and yet your appetite is fading. You are not hungry. You are not thirsty. You are something else. The barkeep finally speaks again, scratching at his beard. First time you hear the weeping, you'll want to fix it. Do not. A pause. Then, that's the trap. Sure enough, somewhere above, just faint enough to doubt your ears, you hear it. A soft sobbing, like a child pretending to cry, testing the waters. It sounds like it is coming from the roof. From inside the roof, you grip your mug tighter. The barmaid with the bracelets slides beside you, now balancing a stack of steaming towels. "Ignore it," she mutters. If you acknowledge it, you invite the damp. You wonder what that means until you spot the man by the door. He is soaked to the bone, dripping. His clothes steam slightly in the candlelight. You are certain he has not stepped outside, and yet he is drenched. You look down at his feet. Bare, boots gone. You remember what the barkeep said. If it starts to whistle, the sobbing fades. A dry warmth settles over the room. The fire crackles lazily now, no longer protesting the strange seeds or the illusions they summon. The cards are being reshuffled. The veiled woman plays now. Her fingers are impossibly long, her nails ink black, the veins in her hands shaped like constellations you once saw in a museum planetarium. She lays a card down, a spiral. Everyone at the table nods. You turn back toward your corner, wondering how long it will be before you can leave, or if that is even the correct question. Historians still argue whether early taverns were actually coded spaces for rituals or just glorified shelters with extra stew. Some believe symbols etched into beams and hearths were protective spells. Others think they were warnings for those who looked too closely. You reach up and trace a carving above your head. It is a symbol you do not recognize. It is warm to the touch. You pull your hand away. A few tables down, someone begins to hum. It is the same melody the veiled woman used earlier, but the tempo is off. A little too slow. A little too heavy. Everyone notices. The barkeep stands straighter. The barmaid drops a towel. Even the shadows lean in. The humming continues. Now layered, dissonant. You glance toward the source and freeze. It is you. You are humming. You do not remember starting. You cover your mouth, but the sound keeps going. Not from your throat, from your table. The grain of the wood is vibrating. You lean in a low, resonant buzz. It matches the melody. It is humming through you. A hand slams down beside you. The blade polishing man again. Stop listening, he growls. Let it finish. You obey. The humming fades. The table is quiet again. The barmaid exhales. Someone claps once, sarcastically. And just like that, everything returns to whatever counts as normal here. You take a shaky breath. The barkeep offers another glowing drink. You down it without asking. It tastes like rosemary and old coins. You realize your boots are damp. Just a little. You look up at the ceiling. It is still breathing. But now, it is smiling too. You do not know how long you have been here now. Minutes? Hours? Days? Time slips like water through cracks in this place, and you are beginning to understand it is not meant to be counted. The rain outside has slowed. The storm's fury is fading like a bad dream. But inside, the tavern has shifted. The walls are breathing in different rhythms. The shadows have rearranged themselves, and you swear the floor is tilting just imperceptibly. The man with the silver rings has returned. This time, he holds a thin, leather-bound book. He flips it open carefully, like it contains secrets that could shatter the world if read aloud. You will want to leave, he says softly, but the tavern has other plans. It keeps those who listen. You nod, already feeling the pull of the place, like gravity, but softer and far more persuasive. Historians still argue whether the term tavern once included a kind of initiation, where guests were tested not by their sword or coin, but by their willingness to accept the unknown. Those who passed could stay. Those who failed were quietly forgotten. You glance around. The other patrons, some real, some less so, are watching you, expecting. The silver-ringed man reads a passage aloud. The words sound ancient, and yet they echo in your mind like a familiar song. The house that breathes and drinks the sky holds the secrets where shadows lie. A chill runs down your spine. You clutch your mug tighter. Do you believe it? You ask. He smiles. Belief is the wrong question. It is truth that matters. You swallow hard. The line between belief and truth blurs here like morning fog. Suddenly, the roof creaks loudly, an alarm or a greeting. You cannot tell. The candle flames leap upward, casting a flickering glow that dances with the shadows like old friends reunited. The barmaid approaches, her eyes bright with unspoken knowledge. The leak is coming, she says quietly. Your heart skips. You glance up. Water droplets are forming along the warped beams, then falling in slow, deliberate drops. Not just water. Something darker. Something thicker. A faint smell of earth. and metal fills the air. The silver-ringed man closes his book with a snap. When the roof weeps, it is a warning, not of rain, but of what seeps beneath. You watch as the droplets hit the floor. Each one sends ripples through the puddles, and the ripples grow, twisting and folding as if alive. The veiled woman stands, reaching into her sleeves to reveal fingers wrapped in strange thread. She mutters a chant, low and humming. The droplets stop, the puddles settle. As silence falls, you realize, in that moment, you have been holding your breath again. The barkeep refills your mug with something dark and glowing faintly in the dim light. You do not ask what it is. You drink. Warmth spreads through your chest, and for a moment, the tavern feels like home. But then the dripping starts again. Faster, heavier. You glance around, searching for a way out. There's none. Just the breathing roof and the storm inside. The heavier dripping is no longer just water. It tastes metallic, and when it hits your skin, it leaves a cold, tingling burn, like a message from something just beyond the veil of ordinary. You wipe your arm with the sleeve of your coat, but the sensation lingers, crawling like tiny ants. You start to notice other small things. The flickering candlelight no longer casts random shadows. Instead, the shapes on the walls begin to form patterns, geometric, fractal, impossible to fully comprehend. They pulse gently in time with the roof's breathing. A dusty old sign above the fireplace reads the curved storm in faded gold leaf, the letters curling and twisting in ways that seem to shift when you blink. A patron seated nearby points at it and mutters, "Not all storms are storms. Some are gateways." You remember the blade polishing man's warning about the curved ones. The idea that some storms do not simply pass, but bend, circle, and sometimes enter places and people. The idea settles in your mind like a cold fog. You feel a strange tug in your chest, like something is both pulling you inward and pushing you outward at once. It is both exhilarating and terrifying. The veiled woman returns to her seat and spreads out a deck of cards again. This time, they show symbols you cannot decipher: eyes, waves, doors opening sideways, and a crescent moon dripping with stars. She deals one card face down toward you. Without touching it, you feel the card's surface ripple beneath your gaze. You reach out hesitantly and flip it. A spiral, but with a faint shimmer you can only describe as liquid. The man with the silver rings nods approvingly. You are seeing it. That means the tavern accepts you. You shiver. The roof groans. A deep, guttural sound like an ancient beast waking from a long slumber. You glance up. A patch of the ceiling shifts slightly, revealing a narrow slit. From it, a thin line of light spills down like a blade, cutting through the gloom. You realize the rain outside is no longer audible. You are alone with the roof's breath and this strange light. The barmaid approaches again, placing a damp cloth on your forehead. "Do not trust your eyes," she whispers. "They are hungry here." You close your eyes, trying to steady your breathing. A flicker behind your eyelids, shapes swirling in colors you cannot name. When you open them again, the tavern has changed. The tables are empty, the patrons gone. Only you remain, The roof breathes still, slow and steady. A voice, soft, barely audible, whispers, "Welcome to the other side of the storm." A historian once described medieval taverns as crossroads of stories, secrets, and spirits. Some believed the line between the living and the dead was thinner there than anywhere else in town. Scholars debate whether this was superstition or an early understanding of what we now call liminal spaces. You realize you have stepped into such a space, and the storm has only just begun. You blink, trying to shake off the sensation of stepping through an unseen veil. The tavern around you has changed in ways you can barely grasp, like walking into a room you thought you knew, only to find the furniture rearranged, the walls slightly thicker, and the air tasting faintly of old paper and winter leaves. The damp cloth on your forehead is still there, cool and oddly comforting. You realize the barmaid is no longer beside you, but her presence lingers, a silent guardian. The silence here is deeper than before. It is the kind of silence that hums, a low vibration felt more than heard. Your breath feels loud, almost intrusive. You look down at your boots. They are no longer damp, but dusty, as if you have traveled a long, forgotten road rather than crossed a single puddle. Across the room, the fireplace glows faintly, embers burning without smoke. The man with the silver rings sits beside it, cradling a tiny flame in his palm that never burns his skin. He catches your gaze and offers a thin smile. "You're between storms now," he says softly. "Not outside, but inside." The tavern is a living thing. It breathes, it remembers, it tests. You feel a weight settle on your chest, not heavy, but persistent, like the first drops of rain before a downpour. Historians still argue whether taverns served merely as social hubs, or if many doubled as secret enclaves for political intrigue, coded messaging, and clandestine meetings. Some argue these dual roles blurred, turning taverns into arenas of subtle power, where whether literal and metaphorical played a critical part. You notice the walls are covered in carved symbols, some faded, others freshly etched. The veiled woman's fingers had traced them earlier, but now they glow faintly in the dim light, pulsing like a heartbeat. You touch one, a spiral that seems to move under your skin. A shiver runs through you. The hearth crackles, and from the flames emerges a figure, translucent but detailed, like a reflection caught in a disturbed pond. It gestures toward the roof. You look up. Water is dripping again, slowly, rhythmically. The droplets catch the light and fall in arcs that seem to curve sideways before hitting the floor. The roof groans in response, louder this time, a deep, mournful sound. Suddenly, the door bursts open with a crash. The barmaid reappears, soaked but smiling. She carries a lantern that flickers with green fire. "Another round is starting," she says, "and you are already behind." You swallow. Behind what? Behind the storm? Behind the story? Behind the tavern itself? She hands you a cup filled with a warm liquid that smells like cedar and rain. "Drink," she says. "You will need it." As you take the cup, the tavern seems to lean in closer, walls creaking as if listening. You realize you are no longer just a guest here. You are a participant, and whatever happens next, the tavern will not forget. You bring the cup to your lips. The liquid inside is warm, but not hot, with a taste that shifts between bitter and sweet, like dark honey mixed with pine resin. It sticks to the back of your throat and leaves a faint trace of smoke in your mouth. You swallow, and for a moment, you feel lighter, like the weight on your chest has lifted, just enough to breathe a little easier. Around you, the tavern is shifting again. The walls pulse softly, as if breathing in sync with your own heartbeat. You catch a glimpse of the veiled woman at the far table, now surrounded by a circle of flickering candles. She hums the same melody you heard before, but this time, it is slower, more deliberate, almost like a chant. You realize the tavern is responding to her song. The shadows begin to dance, stretching and contracting in time with the melody. The air grows thick with a scent of wet earth and aged paper, mingled with something faintly metallic, like the smell of a distant storm. The barkeep wipes a glass behind the bar, his eyes watching you with a knowing glint. He says nothing, but you can feel his presence like a steady anchor amidst the swirling chaos. You glance at the silver-ringed man. He closes his book and stands, moving toward the center of the room. His footsteps are silent on the wooden floor. He holds out his hand, and the circle of candles flares brighter, casting sharp shadows that leap across the walls. Tonight, he says, voice low and steady, the tavern tells a story. You lean forward, curious and cautious. He unfolds the book and begins to read, the words flowing like a river of ink and light. When the skies break open and the waters rise, the roof remembers all its lies. Beneath the shingles and the beams echo the whispers of forgotten dreams. As he speaks, the tavern seems to pulse with energy. The roof creaks louder, and the drip, drip, drip of water accelerates, forming a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. You notice the floorboards beneath your feet are slick, not with water, but something darker, something that glistens faintly under the candlelight. The barmaid returns, carrying a tray of small plates filled with odd morsels, blackened nuts, pickled roots, and what looks like tiny cubes of amber. She offers you one, and you take it, the taste sharp and electric on your tongue. A sudden chill sweeps through the room. The flickering flames shudder, and for a moment, the tavern goes silent. Then, a whisper floats through the air, so faint you almost miss it. Do you hear it? The roof's lament. You turn your gaze upward. The roof is weeping now, not with ordinary water, but with tears that glisten like liquid glass. You reach out instinctively, but the droplets vanish before they touch your skin. The silver-ringed man closes the book. The tavern mourns its past, he says, and warns of the future. You shiver, feeling the weight of those words settle deep inside you. Historians still argue whether tavern songs were simple entertainment or coded warnings passed down through generations. Some believe melodies held the power to soothe restless spirits. Others claim they could summon forces better left undisturbed. You sip your drink, the warmth returning, and wonder if you are ready for what comes next. You try to steady your breathing, but the tavern's pulse has gotten into your veins now, quickening, insistent. The flickering candlelight has softened, casting long, thin shadows that reach for the corners of the room, like eager fingers. The barmaid returns with a quiet smile, placing a small, worn wooden box on the table before you. The wood is smooth from years of handling, but its surface is etched with symbols that seem to shift beneath your gaze. Spirals folding into triangles, triangles folding into waves. You hesitate but lift the lid. Inside is a collection of keys, some rusty, some polished and bright, but all different shapes and sizes. One key is shaped like a crescent moon, another looks like a tiny ladder, and a third is twisted like a corkscrew. The silver-ringed man's voice cuts through your thoughts. Every tavern has doors no one knows about. Some open to rooms filled with warmth and light. Others, he gestures to the darkened corners, lead to places better left unopened. You pick up the crescent moon key, turning it slowly between your fingers. It feels surprisingly heavy, as if it carries the weight of 1,000 storms. You recall something from your research. In medieval Europe, some taverns were known to have secret compartments or hidden cellars, used by smugglers or political dissidents. Historians debate whether these spaces were merely practical or part of elaborate rituals, some even suggesting that taverns functioned as gateways to spiritual realms during intense weather. You glance up. The veiled woman watches you intently, her eyes gleaming in the candlelight. She murmurs something in a language you do not recognize, but the tone is soothing, almost hypnotic. The roof creaks again. This time the leak has widened, and water flows steadily down in a thin, shimmering stream, pooling on the floor at your feet. The liquid ripples unnaturally, reflecting not the tavern, but scenes from somewhere else: sunlit forests, stormy seas, shadowed caverns. You realize you are looking through the roof's tears into another world. The barkeep steps closer, setting a heavy hand on your shoulder. "Choose wisely," he says, "because some doors, once opened, do not close easily." Your fingers tighten around the crescent key. The air thickens. The rain outside hammers the roof harder now, a relentless drumbeat. You think of the stories you have heard of travelers lost in storms, wandering through endless taverns that never let them go. Some say the roof was alive, swallowing those who failed its tests, keeping their memories trapped within its wood and stone. The key feels warm suddenly, almost pulsing. You raise it to the door at the far end of the room, a door you had not noticed before. It is small, unassuming, but the lock matches your key perfectly. Your heart hammers in your chest as you reach out to insert it. The tavern holds its breath, and so do you. The key slides into the lock with surprising ease, turning smoothly as if it were waiting just for you. The door creaks open, revealing a narrow, spiraling staircase descending into darkness. A faint glow emanates from below, flickering like candlelight caught in a slow dance with shadows. You hesitate on the threshold. Behind you, the tavern seems to hold its breath. The walls pulse softly, the roof creaks in a slow rhythm, and the air hums with unspoken secrets. The man with the silver rings nods encouragingly, though his eyes betray a hint of warning. You take the first step down. The wood beneath your boots feels solid yet alive, responding to your weight with a subtle bounce. The scent changes, damp earth mingled with something sweet, like burning frankincense. As you descend, the whispers begin, soft, unintelligible at first, then growing clearer. Voices speaking in languages long lost, melodies twisting and turning like smoke. You recognize one word, repeated over and over. Remember. At the bottom, you step into a chamber lined with shelves holding countless glass jars filled with strange contents, glowing herbs, shimmering powders, and liquids that ripple with shifting colors. In the center stands a table carved from a single slab of dark wood, upon which lies an ancient map. The map depicts a landscape that shifts beneath your gaze. Mountains rise and fall, rivers twist and flow backward, and storms swirl endlessly above. A small tavern symbol pulses softly near the center. The silver-ringed man's voice echoes in your mind. This is the heart of the storm, the tavern's secret. You reach out and touch the map. The surface ripples like water, and suddenly you are looking down upon a vast, storm-battered landscape, where taverns like this one, the land like beacons. Historians still argue whether such maps were tools for navigation or metaphors for the human mind's journey through uncertainty and fear. Some believe they were coded warnings. Others insist they were guides for those brave enough to face the unknown. A sudden splash of cold water breaks your concentration. You look up to see the roof leaking again, but this time the droplets fall inside the chamber, turning into tiny whirlpools on the floor. The veiled woman appears at the staircase entrance, her eyes shining with urgency. "You cannot stay," she says softly. "The storm will claim you if you do." You glance back at the map, then up at the spiraling staircase. The choice weighs heavily. Stay and uncover the tavern's deepest secrets, or climb back to the uncertain safety of the familiar. You know one thing for sure. You will not leave this place unchanged. You turn away from the map reluctantly, feeling the magnetic pull of the unknown tugging at your curiosity and caution in equal measure. The chamber's walls seem to close in, the shadows stretching longer, thicker, as if trying to hold you there a little longer. Your fingers linger on the dark wood of the table, tracing the carved edges. You feel the grain beneath your skin, rough and warm, like a heartbeat echoing beneath the storm. The whispers fade, replaced by a low rumble, distant but growing. The storm above has not forgotten you. As you ascend the spiraling staircase, the narrow walls seem to close tighter, the air growing colder with each step. The lantern in the barmaid's hands flickers beside you, casting uncertain light over the worn steps. Back in the main room, the tavern's usual bustle has returned, or what passes for bustle here. Shadows move, voices murmur, and the roof leaks with less urgency, but steady persistence. You catch sight of the man with the silver rings, speaking quietly to the veiled woman. Their conversation is hushed, but you sense they are discussing you. The barmaid approaches, refilling your cup with a steaming liquid that smells faintly of cinnamon and rain. You take a slow sip, feeling warmth spread through your chest. Outside, The rain has eased to a gentle patter, but the storm's presence remains, a reminder that comfort is temporary here. You glance around the tavern, noticing details you missed before. A cracked mirror reflecting a room that is not quite the same as the one you occupy, a clock that runs backward, and a collection of worn boots by the door, too many for such a small place. You realize that every visitor leaves a trace here, just as the tavern leaves a trace on them. The silver-ringed man catches your eye and gestures toward the fireplace. You join him, feeling the warmth and the steady glow of the embers. He leans in and whispers, "The tavern's roof is more than shelter. It is a keeper of memories, a recorder of storms, and it chooses who stays and who goes." You nod slowly, understanding the weight of his words. Historians still argue whether taverns served as mere drinking halls or as sacred spaces where communities confronted their fears and celebrated their stories. Some believe the leaky roofs and weathered beams carried the echoes of generations. Others think it was all superstition. But here in this tavern, the line feels thin. The roof creaks again, a sound like a sigh. You look up, wondering what stories is trying to tell. The rain outside has slowed to a mere drizzle, but inside the tavern, the atmosphere thickens with anticipation. The shadows twist in corners you swear were empty moments ago, and the flickering candle flames stretch long and hungry, like fingers reaching for secrets. You find yourself drawn to the barmaid once more. She is polishing glasses, her movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. When she catches your gaze, she offers a small, knowing smile, the kind that hints at stories untold and dangers narrowly avoided. "Not many last through the storm," she says softly, her voice barely above the whisper of rain against the windows. The roof has its favorites and its victims. You ponder her words, thinking about the roof as a living entity, not just a shelter battered by weather, but a guardian, a judge, a trickster. The silver-ringed man approaches, holding a small, leather-bound book. He opens it to a page filled with intricate drawings of taverns, each with unique roof designs, some flat, some sharply pitched, others thatched or tiled. Each roof tells a story, a history of the storms it has weathered and the secrets it keeps. He points to one drawing, a tavern with a roof full of holes patched with leather and tin. "This one," he says, "is said to be haunted by the laughter of lost travelers and the whispers of forgotten deals." You notice a peculiar detail, a tiny figure etched into the corner of the page, a man holding a wine glass, his face half shadowed, half lit by candlelight. Historians still argue whether these roof designs were purely functional or imbued with symbolic meaning, reflecting the tavern's role in community rites and folk beliefs. Some suggest the holes in roofs were deliberate, letting the storm in as a test of loyalty and courage. A sudden gust rattles the windows, and a shard of rainwater splashes onto your hand. You glance up, there it is again, the leak, steady and unrelenting. You recall the veiled woman's chant and the strange melody that seemed to pulse in time with the dripping water. The barkeep gestures toward the fireplace, where the flames dance with a new intensity, casting moving shapes on the walls, shapes that look like faces, animals, even distant landscapes. You realize the tavern is alive in ways you never imagined, a crossroads between weather and memory, between shelter and story. You take a deep breath and settle into your chair, knowing that the night is far from over and the roof is still watching. You close your eyes briefly, trying to shake the strange weight pressing on your mind. When you open them again, the tavern has shifted subtly. The barmaid is nowhere to be seen, and the murmurs of conversation have faded to a hushed silence, like the calm before a storm within the storm. You rise and move toward the window, pressing your palm against the cool glass. Outside, the rain has almost stopped, but the sky remains a roiling canvas of dark clouds, as if the heavens themselves are brooding. Your reflection wavers in the glass, and for a brief moment, you see not yourself, but a stranger, someone older, wearied by countless nights spent chasing shelter under leaky roofs and unreliable skies. A shiver runs down your spine. You turn away, only to find the veiled woman standing behind you, her eyes full of stories and sorrow. She extends a hand, silent invitation or warning. You cannot tell which. You follow her through a narrow doorway you had not noticed before. The air here smells of damp wood and old parchment. Inside, rows of books line the walls, each spine cracked and faded, filled with tales of taverns lost to time, of storms that swallowed whole villages, of laughter and lament beneath fragile roofs. You pull a volume from the shelf, its cover worn, but its pages alive with ink that seems to shimmer. As you read, you discover tales of travelers who sought refuge in taverns during great storms, only to find themselves trapped in loops of time, reliving the same storm night after night. Historians still argue whether these tales are folklore or metaphors for human resilience in the face of relentless nature. Some say they serve as cautionary tales, others as celebrations of survival. The veiled woman whispers, "The roof remembers all who seek shelter beneath it," and some stories never end. You feel the weight of those words settle deep within you, a mixture of comfort and unease. Outside, a distant thunder rolls, reminding you that the storm is never truly over. You close the book gently, knowing that this tavern, this night, has become part of your own story, one you will carry with you long after the rain stops. You step back into the main room, the warmth of the tavern wrapping around you like a heavy blanket. The storm outside has mellowed to a steady drizzle, but inside, the energy remains electric, alive with the stories you have glimpsed, the secrets whispered in shadowed corners. The man with the silver rings approaches you once more, holding a small, steaming cup. "One last taste," he says softly, "to remember." You take the cup, a liquid warm and slightly sweet like honey infused with herbs you cannot name. It settles in your stomach with a comforting glow. Around you, the tavern begins to quiet, the murmurs fading into gentle hums, the flickering flames softening to a steady glow. You catch the barmaid's eye across the room. She nods once, a silent farewell, or perhaps a warning. You realize now that this place, this leaky roof tavern, is more than a shelter from the storm. It is a crucible, a place where the boundaries between past and present, reality and story, blur and bend. Historians still debate the true role of taverns in their communities, whether they were merely social hubs or something more mystical, places where collective memory was forged and preserved through ritual and tale. You sip your drink slowly, savoring the warmth and the quiet, feeling a strange sense of belonging and loss intertwined. The roof creaks gently overhead, a reminder that it will endure long after you are gone, holding its stories close. And you will carry this night with you, a reminder that sometimes the storm outside is nothing compared to the storms we carry within. The tavern has settled into a comfortable silence, the kind that feels like the calm after a tempest both outside and inside. You lean back in your chair, letting the warmth of the fire seep into your bones as the last drops of rain trace their way down the weathered windows. Your mind drifts to the leaky roof above, the persistent drip that once threatened your patience, now a gentle metronome syncing with the steady beat of your heart. It is a reminder of impermanence, of resilience, and of the strange comfort found in imperfection. The barmaid appears once more, placing a small, wrapped bundle before you. Inside, you find a simple wooden token shaped like a raindrop. It is smooth and cool to the touch, worn by time and countless hands. You may not last a rainy day in many taverns, she says softly, but this one remembers you. You tuck the token into your pocket, a talisman against future storms, both literal and metaphorical. Outside, the storm has finally passed, leaving behind a fresh, washed world and the faint scent of earth and renewal. Historians still argue whether taverns like this served as mere inns, or as sacred spaces where communities faced their fears and forged connections beneath fragile roofs and roaring skies. You rise slowly, the weight of the night settling around you like a cloak. The tavern door creaks open, and you step out into the quiet aftermath, the sky clearing, the world waiting. You glance back one last time. The leaky roof stands strong, scars and all, a testament to endurance, mystery, and the stories waiting just beyond the storm. The rain has softened to a gentle drizzle, whispering secrets as it slides over the worn shingles of the tavern's roof. You breathe in the cool, damp air, feeling it fill your lungs and calm your restless thoughts. The flickering candlelight inside fades slowly, shadows shrinking back into their corners, as if the night itself is drawing a deep, slow breath. The tavern's creaking wood and the steady drip of water become a lullaby, a rhythm that soothes the edges of your mind. Memories of the storm, the flickering flames, the whispered stories, all begin to settle like leaves drifting to a quiet forest floor. There is comfort here in the imperfection of the leaky roof, in the warmth shared by strangers, in the stories that bind past to present. You carry with you the echoes of laughter and whispers, the taste of warm spices, and the gentle weight of a wooden raindrop nestled in your pocket. As you close your eyes, the storm's roar fades into a soft murmur, and the world outside becomes a canvas of quiet possibilities. You are not alone in this moment. The tavern stories will travel with you, a soft glow in the dark, Rest easy now. Let the rain sing you to sleep, and know that every storm, no matter how fierce, passes, leaving behind the promise of calm and the chance for new stories to begin. Sweet dreams.